की, वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की, मायापुर नवदीप धाम की, गंगा माए की, जमुना माए की, भक्ति देवी की, वृंद देवी तुलसी महारानी की, कलियुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र संकीर्तन यज्ञ की, बृहद मृदंग ट्रांसेंडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की, समवेद गौर भक्त वृंद की, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे. All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी, जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी. गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी. यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना, यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना. यशोदानन्दन व्रजजनरञ्जना. यमुनातिरावनचारी, यमुनातिरावनचारी. जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी, गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना. यमुनातिरावनचारी, जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी. जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। Hare Krishna. So today we are going to discuss from the third canto, 13th chapter. The chapter is titled as The Appearance of Lord Varaha, text number 4. Okay. Shrutasya pumsam suchirashramasya nanvanjasa suribiriditortaha तत्तद्गुणानुश्रवणं मुकुन्द पादारविन्दं हृदयेषु येषाम् श्रुतस्य पुंसां सुचिरश्रमस्य नन्वञ्जसा सूरिभिरीडितोऽर्तः तत्तद्गुणानुश्रवणं मुकुन्द पादारविन्दं हृदयेषु येषाम् श्रुतस्य पुंसां सुचिरश्रमस्य नन्वञ्जसा सूरिभिरीडितोऽर्तः तत्तद्गुणानुश्रवणं मुकुन्द पादारविन्दं हृदयेषु येषाम् नन्वञ्जसा सूरिभिरीडितोऽर्तः तत्तद्गुणानुश्रवणं पादारविन्दं हृदयेषु येषाम् श्रुतस्य पुंसां सुचिरश्रमस्य नन्वञ्जसा सूरिभिरीडितोऽर्तः तत्तद्गुणानुश्रवणं मुकुन्द पादारविन्दं हृदयेषु येषाम्। माताजी, श्रुतस्य पुंसां सुचिरश्रमस्य तन्मञ्जसा सूरिभिरीडितोऽर्तः तत्तद्गुणानुश्रवणं मुकुन्द पादारविन्दं हृदयेषु येषाम्। Shrutasya, of persons who are in the process of hearing. Pumsam, of such persons. Suchira, for a long time. Shramasya, laboring very hard. Nanu, certainly. Anjasa, elaborately. Suribihi, by pure devotees. Iditaha, explained by. Artaha, statements. Tat, that. Tat, that. Guna, transcendental qualities. Anushravanam, thinking. Mukunda, the personality of Godhead, who awards liberation. Padaravindam, the lotus feet. Hridayeshu, within the heart. Yesham, of them. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Persons who hear from a spiritual master with great labor and for a long time must hear from the mouths of pure devotees about the character and activities of pure devotees. Pure devotees always think within their hearts of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, who awards his devotees liberation. Purport. The transcendental students are those who undergo great penance in being trained by hearing the Vedas from a bona fide spiritual master. Not only must they hear about the activities of the Lord, but they must also hear about the transcendental qualities of the devotees who are constantly thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord within their hearts. A pure devotee of the Lord cannot be separated from the lotus feet of the Lord even for a moment. Undoubtedly, the Lord is always within the hearts of all living creatures, but they hardly know about it because they are deluded by the illusory material energy. The devotees, however, realize the presence of the Lord, and therefore they can always see the lotus feet of the Lord within their hearts. Such pure devotees of the Lord are as glorious as the Lord. They are in fact recommended by the Lord as more worshipable than He Himself. Worship of the devotee is more potent than worship of the Lord. It is therefore the duty of the transcendental students to hear of pure devotees as explained by similar devotees of the Lord, because one cannot explain about the Lord or His devotee unless one happens to be a pure devotee himself. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, we are in this 13th chapter of the 3rd canto where Maitreya is narrating to Vidura about creation of Brahma, and at this point of time he has just narrated about the manifestation of Swayambhuva Manu, and Vidura is very excited. He wants to know more about Swayambhuva Manu because Swayambhuva Manu is such a great devotee of the Lord. He wants to know about him, he wants to know about his activities, his qualities, his lineage. So, in order to inspire Maitreya to speak more about Swayambhuva Manu, in this particular verse, he expresses how much he appreciates hearing about devotees. He says that the greatest thing that one can hear from one spiritual master is to hear about the glorification of devotees, even more than hearing about the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, today, in this context, we will discuss about the theme of the importance of association of Vaishnavas. So, I have a few sub-themes within this, and I'll see how much we can cover today. First, talking about Sadhu Sangha, first we will try to understand who is a sadhu. This is very important to understand. In the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Kapiladev describes a sadhu. He says, Titikshava karunika suhridas sarvadehinam ajata shatravashanta sadhavo sadhubhushana. He describes who is a sadhu. A sadhu is one who is endowed with wonderful qualities like tolerance, mercy, being friendly to all living entities, and so on. Sadhavo sadhubhushana. So these are the ornaments of a sadhu. But then, these are not necessarily reliable qualities. These are not reliable symptoms. These are mentioned to be the secondary qualities. Okay. These are important, but what is a more reliable quality is, he says in the next two verses, Mai ananyena bhavena bhaktim kurvanti ye dridam matkrite tyakta karmanas tyakta swajana bandhava. He says, a real sadhu is one who worships me with ananya bhava, means no dependence on anyone else but Krishna, not on the demigods or anyone else. Bhaktim kurvanti ye dridam. He performs very firm bhakti, which is not diluted by jnana, karma, yoga, etc. Matkrite tyakta karmanas. Because he is so convinced of the process of bhakti that he gives up even dependence on his duties as of varna and ashrama. Tyakta swajana bandhava. And if they become an obstacle to his practice of bhakti, he is willing to give up his attachment to his own family members also for worshipping Krishna. So this is considered to be the primary characteristic of, or the Swarupa Lakshana of a devotee. And what are the activities of such a devotee? In the next verse, Kapiladev says, Madashraya katamishta shrinvanti katayanti cha tapanti vividastapa naitan madgata chetasaha. He says, Madashraya, such people, such devotees, take shelter of Krishna. Shrinvanti katayanti cha. In the association of Vaishnavas, they hear Krishna Katha, and if they get a interested speaker, they speak Krishna Katha. And in this way, na tapanti vividastapa. So they do not suffer due to the material miseries because of their absorption in hearing and chanting about Krishna. Madgata chetasaha. In this way, their hearts are completely absorbed in Krishna. So, these are the prime symptoms of a sadhu. One who is interested in hearing and chanting about Krishna, and one who is willing to worship exclusively Krishna and not any other demigods, and by the pure process of Uttama Bhakti. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhakti ruttama. He is a sadhu. So, the initial verse which spoke about the qualities, they naturally follow. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvair gunais tatra samasate sura. So the verse says that when one practices akinchana bhakti or anyabhilashita shunya bhakti, naturally all these qualities follow. So it may take some time for the qualities to follow. So therefore one should look for the primary quality of Krishnaika Sharanam, exclusive surrender to Krishna, unmixed by jnana, karma, yoga, etc. So, in Sri Harinam Chintamani, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, he says that a Vaishnava may be criticized on 4 counts. He's not suggesting, he's telling that generally people are, it is observed that people may criticize Vaishnava on 4 counts. First, he's caste by birth. Oh, he's not born in a Brahmana family. Oh, he's not born in India. He's born in the Western world. Okay. So people may criticize them because of their caste by birth. Sometimes they may be criticized because of their previous sins or faults in this life. They did not have a very honorable life, you know. So sometimes they may be criticized prior to coming to Krishna consciousness. So they may be criticized for that. Our third reason, an unpremeditated accidental act of sin due to their sinful vasanas not being destroyed completely. Sometimes they may succumb to some unholy act by the force of their sinful vasanas, even while being a devotee. So they may be criticized for that. Or, he says, present traces of previous sinful activities. So sometimes, like probably they were chewing tobacco and their teeth get stained. And then they become devotees. They give up tobacco, but still the stain in the teeth is there, which indicates that you were chewing tobacco before. So sometimes people may criticize, oh, look at him. He has a stained teeth. You know, he had such bad habits before. So though, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, though all these conditions may be present in a Vaishnava, they are insubstantial grounds for criticism of a Vaishnava. Insubstantial, which means devotees should not be criticized for that. One who so blasphemes a Vaishnava will be punished by Yamaraj. And even if there appears some bad element or fault in a person, if he has the chief characteristic, which is surrender to Krishna, he must be considered a sadhu and to be respected and served by all. This is Krishna's statement in Bhagavad Gita. Apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak sadhureva samantavya samyak vyavasito hi saha. This is what he says. So when one has developed a slight taste for chanting the holy name, it is said that chanting just one time will destroy the influence of all past sins. Of course, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, some remnants of those sins may still remain, but they will completely vanish by the influence of the holy name. It's just a question of time. Okay. So, and in Madhurya Kadambini, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, while describing about Nishta, the stage of Nishta, Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, then Nishta, the state of steady devotional service, he tells that there are 2 types of Nishta. One is reliable, another is not so reliable. He says the first type is called as Sakshat Bhaktir Vartini. And the second is called as Bhakti Anukula Vastu Vartini. Okay. What is Sakshat Bhaktir Vartini? He says that such a person shows very steady practice of the limbs of devotion. Shravanam, Kirtanam, etc. The second type is there is steadiness in qualities like humility, cleanliness, tolerance, all these things, respect. There is steadiness in that. So this is Sakshat Bhaktir Vartini and Bhakti Anukula Vastu Vartini, 2 types. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur raises a question here. Of the 2, which is a reliable symptom of Nishta? He has. And he says, actually it is the first one. Sakshat Bhaktir Vartini, where there is steadiness of bhakti, in the steadiness of practice of the limbs of bhakti, that is a more reliable symptom. And elements favorable to bhakti, like humility, tolerance, etc., they will naturally follow. Otherwise, it is quite possible that one grew up in a very sattvic family, sattvic environment, and he could have developed those qualities without the influence of bhakti also. So therefore, that is not a very reliable symptom. So you may see a very respectful person, very humble, very genuine, but he may not have very steady practice of devotional service. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, in that case, the manifestation of the steadiness in qualities is very likely not due to bhakti. Of course, it's not that that has to be given up. Bhakti protects that humility. Bhakti will protect that tolerance. Bhakti will protect that cleanliness and all of that. Like that. So this is a sadhu. So we saw the primary characteristics of a sadhu and the secondary characteristics of a sadhu, and we saw that the reliable symptoms are the primary characteristics. Krishneka Sharanam. Now, next we will talk about Sangha. What is Sangha? What is the meaning of Sangha? Because we are talking about Sadhu Sangha. So we understood what is the definition of a sadhu. Now we will try to understand what is Sangha. Sangha is often loosely translated as association. Okay. But Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his essay on Sangatyaga in Bhaktyaloka, he writes, he talks about what is Asat Sangha. He presents a very interesting situation which all of us face. He says that in the scriptures, Asat Sangha is criticized. It is mentioned to be a great obstacle. But what about householders who may be in an occupation where they will have to deal with their co-workers who are not devotees? Is that not Asat Sangha? So should they give up their occupation in order to avoid Asat Sangha? This is a question that arises. Very practical question. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, no, that is not necessary. Because then he defines what is Sangha. Sangha means where there is Preeti, that is Sangha. Where there is an affectionate bond, a healthy emotional dependence on the other person, that is called as Sangha. Co-working or cohabiting with someone is not, it does not necessarily qualify as Sangha. So this he is talking about Asat Sangha, to encourage householders to not feel overly guilty for working along with their co-employees who may not be devotees. He says no. He says that as long as you are not engaged in the 6 exchanges of dadati, pratigrinnati, guhya makyati, pruchati, bhunkte, bojete, cheva, it is not considered to be Sangha. Activities, he says, activities like talking with worldly people in the course of one's work is not considered Sangha. When the same activities are done with affection for someone, then that is considered association with that person. So now the same applies to Satsanga also. That which applies to Asat Sangha applies to Satsanga also. So living with devotees is not necessarily Satsanga. When there is an healthy emotional dependence, a healthy emotional bond between two personalities where they genuinely care for each other, that is called as Sangha. And that will create an impact in the heart. And one aspect of it is meaningful Krishna-centered interactions, meaningful conversations. And what should not be done is discussing generic non-Krishna conscious topics, even though it may seem to be very important from a very global perspective. Bhagavatam says, Paraswabhava karmani yap prashamsati nindati sa ashu brashyate swartad asati abhiniveshitah. He says, whoever indulges in either criticizing or praising, even praising, he says, whoever indulges in criticizing or praising the qualities and behavior of others, especially non-devotees, Sa ashu brashyate swartat. Such a person will very quickly become deviated from attaining his goal of life. Why? Asati abhiniveshitaha. Because his mind will get completely absorbed in the temporary things of this world. You know, it could be politics, it could be Ayurveda, it could be whatever. So even though these seem to be very important, very relevant to our life, and we can definitely know about it a little bit, but we should not be absorbed in discussing about it. It should be Krishna-centered discussions with a goal of developing a healthy emotional bond with the other person. So that is the definition of Sangha. So we saw the definition of Sadhu. We saw that what is Sangha. Now, the third theme that we will discuss is how to develop and sustain a Sangha. Okay. Briefly, we will touch this topic. The key verse that encapsulates this whole thing is what Srila Rupa Goswami mentions in the 4th verse of Nectar of Instruction. Dadati pratigrinnati guhyamakyati pruchati bhungte bhojayate chaiva shadvidam priti lakshanam. Very simple. In fact, this is not even a very... This verse was adapted by Srila Rupa Goswami from the Panchatantra, which talks about morality, normal human dealings with people. Okay. So this 6 principles, he says, is not necessarily very spiritual, but it has relevance in spirituality very much. It talks about how you can make a good relationship with the other person. He says if you have these 6 exchanges, dadati pratigrinnati, you give someone some gifts, receive some gifts in return. Guhyamakyati pruchati, express your heart in confidence to the other person and hear from him with empathy. Okay. Bhungte bhojayate, offer him some prasadam and accept prasadam when he offers you. Shadvidam priti lakshanam, these are the 6 symptoms of priti, existence of a loving bond between 2 persons. Srila Prabhupada, in the purport to this, he writes, even in ordinary social activities, these 6 types of dealings between 2 loving friends are absolutely necessary. Prabhupada says absolutely necessary if that relationship has to sustain. For instance, Prabhupada writes, when one businessman wishes to contact another businessman, he arranges a feast in a hotel. Bhungte bhojayate. And over the feast, he openly expresses what he wishes to do. Guhyamakyati pruchati. He then inquires from his business friend how he should act, and sometimes presents are exchanged. Dadati pratigrinnati. Thus, whenever there is a dealing of priti or love in intimate dealings, these 6 activities are executed, Srila Prabhupada writes. Then he writes, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been established to facilitate these 6 kinds of loving exchanges between devotees. So the purpose, one of the prime purposes of ISKCON is, Prabhupada writes, to facilitate these 6 kinds of exchanges. The life of the Krishna Conscious Society is nourished by these 6 types of loving exchange among the members. Therefore, people must be given the chance to associate with the devotees of ISKCON, because simply by reciprocating in the 6 ways mentioned above, an ordinary man can fully revive his dormant Krishna consciousness. Just by the 6 exchanges. So what these 6 exchanges does is, it creates a healthy interdependence. So the purpose of spiritual life is not to become self-sustainable. Self-sustainability is not the purpose of spiritual life. The purpose of spiritual life is healthy interdependence, because there has to be flow of emotions to sustain a joyous life, whether it is material or spiritual. I remember during our brahmachari training days, we had one devotee who was taking care of us, His Grace Vamshi Vihari Prabhu. So, one devotee was sharing with me. So he was the one who first taught all the devotees how to shave themselves, how they can shave themselves. And one day, he requested one devotee to shave his head. And the devotee he was new, he was brahmachari trainee. And he shaved his head, Vamshivihari Prabhu's head, and he told with great joy, Prabhu, you know what? Actually, I learned shaving myself only 2 days back, and I can still shave myself. And who taught him? Vamshivihari Prabhu only taught. Vamshivihari Prabhu, so he was just communicating to him, look, I can shave myself, but you cannot. So Vamshivihari Prabhu looked at him with great compassion, and he told, you think I can't shave myself? I requested you to shave me so that becomes a cause of my developing some emotions towards you, some feelings of gratitude towards you, so that it can build a bond. So that seeking help was an act of an endeavor to develop a bond. So this is one very powerful example that, and the devotee said that it took me many years to really understand what he was trying to communicate. Years of experience, of staying with the devotees. So, but if you see these 6 exchanges, 4 of these exchanges are very foundational exchanges. The first 2 and the last 2. Dadati pratigrinnati and bhungte bhojayate. Giving gifts, receiving gifts, and giving prasadam and accepting prasadam. These are very foundational. If these foundational limbs are done properly, then the relationship may develop to a level where one becomes comfortable to open his heart to the other person in confidence, and also becomes eager to hear from the other person with empathy. So the middle 2 limbs are very, you can say, next level limbs of these 6 exchanges. But if you see this is my opinion, this is not Shastric. In an ashram setup, actually these 4 very foundational exchanges are actually institutionally taken care. While it has to be, if it is individual, it nourishes preeti. If it is institutional, someone cooks. If at home someone cooks, they cook according to your desire, and that generates, joy. In an institution, you cannot do that. Okay. So there are 100 people. You have to cook, and there has to be a fixed menu that has to be followed. So that simple act of cooking, which has the potential to generate that gratitude and that bond, doesn't generate. Okay. And, getting something for the other person. It's also centrally managed. You have the toiletries department, you have the dhoti kurta, everything you get, centrally. So those very simple exchanges which can actually generate a tangible emotional, osmosis between 2 people, when it is centrally managed, it becomes little impersonal. So I am telling this because devotees should be aware of this and has to take the extra step to take some personal responsibility. But there is a powerful solution in an ashram setup. That is time. That is the solution. And you have a group of devotees who are here to progress spiritually. So that exchange, which can potentially come in the form of food and gifts, can come in the form of discussion of Krishna Katha. Parasparanu katanam pavanam bhagavad yashah Mito ratihi mitastushtihi nivrittir mita atmanah. Bhagavatam says, 11th canto. Parasparanu katanam. When devotees come together and start sharing pavanam bhagavadyashah, the most purifying discussions of Krishna consciousness, it has three effects. Mito rati. They start developing mutual affection for each other. Why? Because they are not discussing my own achievements and your own achievements, which will only generate envy. They are discussing the purifying topics of Krishna consciousness. Mito rati. It develops mutual affection. Mitaha tushti. They look forward to spending time with each other because it gives so much satisfaction. And nivrittir mita atmanaha. Nivrittir mita atmanaha means it generates an inspiration to become detached from material enjoyment. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur commenting on this, he says, how does this happen? He says that mutually one will become detached from material enjoyment, from one's wife and other things which may be unfavorable for devotional development. This means, he says, when he looks at his friend who was previously struggling with material attachments, now becoming detached by practice of bhakti, he thinks, oh, if you are becoming detached, I will also become detached starting from today. I have hope. So when there is that strong bond between the two, centered around discussing Krishna Katha, what it does, it gives hope that if he could overcome by practice of bhakti his material attachments, then I also have hope. So that is actually the 6 exchanges. So this discussing Krishna Katha is a very powerful antidote for those 4 foundational exchanges being centrally managed. We may think that it is a handicap, but that handicap is actually compensated in the form of time and a group of like-minded devotees who are ready to discuss Krishna Katha. Once, few years back, His Grace Anand Vrindavan Prabhu, after His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj's class, he asked a question, very serious question. Maharaj, how will we manage after you leave the planet? How are we going to manage ourselves? It's not that he had already told Maharaj that I am going to ask you this question or anything of that sort. It was a very spontaneous question. No one would expect such a question in a public forum. At least I would not expect. And Maharaj, without missing a beat, before he even ended the question, Maharaj said, Macchitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam. Katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha, he said. The only way the Sangha of devotees can sustain together happily is if they come together with Krishna in their hearts, if they come together and discuss Krishna Katha and take pleasure in discussing Krishna Katha. That is the only way, Maharaj said. Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. So, this is about, we are discussing the theme of how to develop and sustain a Sangha, which is the central theme is Dadati Pratigrinnati Guhyamakyati Pritchati. So, this is mostly we were discussing about this without a real distinction of whether it is between equals or between seniors and juniors, because this principle is universal. Srila Bhaktirakshak Sridhar Swami Maharaj, in his commentary to Upadeshamrita, he gives beautiful insights on how these 6 principles apply to a junior devotee and a senior devotee. Whether it could be a disciple and the guru, or a senior Vaishnava and a junior Vaishnava. So, he says that the principle, some parts of it I am paraphrasing. He says the principle is service attitude. Okay. He says higher association is only possible with a service attitude. Otherwise, he says there is no Sangha. Lower association means exploitation and enjoyment. So exploitation by the superior and the enjoyment tendency of the subordinate. But higher association can only be achieved through service, he says. Then talking about offering gifts and accepting gifts, he gives a very beautiful insight here. He says, we shall come to present new things to the sadhus and try to live by the old remnants left by them. So you gift them something new and you accept their old things and you try to live by it. Which means that is possible only if you value the remnants of a sadhu. If you value the remnants of a sadhu, you will value it more than a new item, which may have longer life and more efficient working and all that. Giving something for the service of a sadhu and taking his remnants, whatever he gives, we accept that. He says we can increase our attraction and love for a person in such a way by giving him new items and accepting his prasadam. Okay. So he says the mood should be, we shall try to live by the remnants of the Vaishnavas. That should be the mood, he says. This is the mood of dadati pratigrinnati, when it comes to the mood of a subordinate. And he says, when I accept the elaborate energy, just like he quotes this verse, Vishaira anna khaile malina hayaman, malina mana haile nahe krishnera smaran, Chaitanya Charitamrita. If I accept the food or the remnants of a materialist, my consciousness becomes contaminated. And when my consciousness becomes contaminated, I cannot think of Krishna. Similarly, when I accept the remnants of a sadhu, my heart or my consciousness becomes favorably influenced, and that way I can favorably remember Krishna. So that should be the mode of dadati pratigrinnati between a subordinate and a superior. I will give him something new so that he will be willing to part with his old remnants, which I will worship and use it for myself, so that it favorably impacts my consciousness and I can favorably think of Krishna, remember Krishna. And so the same thing applies to bhungte bhojayate. Okay. For a sadhu, you give him prasadam and accept his remnants. Then he talks about guhyamakyati pruchati, revealing one's mind in confidence and inquiring confidentially from him. He says, I should reveal my innermost feelings to the sadhu. From my innermost heart, I feel these many particular things within myself. So I should tell him, are these feelings good or are they bad? If it is bad, can you please tell me what is the remedy? This is the kind of inquiry. Guhyamakyati pruchati. Revealing my heart. This is what I am going through. What should I do? Is this good? Is this bad? Pruchati. We shall place our inner heart before him so that he may examine us and proceed accordingly. Whatever the innermost feeling is, that should be divulged to a sadhu. And the second thing he says is another type of inquiry. I shall inquire about the inner wealth within his heart. What is that? He says, we will ask his advice and put questions which are necessary for me at this stage. So we should ask, what is the secret of your holy life? What is the secret of your holy life? How are you able to be so enthusiastic every day? How is it that you don't miss morning program even a single day? Okay. Please tell me and I shall try to follow that example in order to get out of my present circumstances. Okay, like that. We shall try to collect the secrets for success in life from a sadhu. This is guhyamakyati pruchati. This is the guhyamakyati pruchati from the perspective of a subordinate with respect to a superior. Okay, like that. So, we discussed three themes till now. We saw what is the definition of a sadhu, what is the definition of sangha, and how to develop and sustain a sangha, sadhu sangha. The next theme that we will discuss is what are the elements of a good sangha. Elements of a good Sangha. Srila Rupa Goswami defines this in one sentence, one phrase actually. Sajatiya ashaye snigde sadhu sangha swatovare. So he says sadhu sangha must have these three aspects. First thing he says is sajatiya ashaye. Sajatiya ashaye means like-mindedness. What is like-mindedness? Like-mindedness means, in essence, sharing the same definition of success. Whatever I think is the definition of success, the other person also thinks as the same definition of success. Okay. So, the definition of this like-mindedness will get fine-tuned more and more once we progress on the path of devotion. As soon as one is very new to devotional service, he will think, oh, like-minded association means devotees association. Not like-minded means non-devotee association. Okay. Then once he spends some time within a parampara, his definition of like-mindedness gets fine-tuned. He thinks like-minded means belonging to the same sampradaya. Because now I am already associating only with Vaishnavas. So now like-minded association means one who has attachment to the same form of the Lord, one who has attachment to the same sampradaya. So that becomes the definition of like-minded. Then, after spending little more time, the definition of like-mindedness becomes even more fine-tuned. Those who relish the same limbs of devotional service. You will see these pockets. Devotees who love kirtan, they will hang out together, spend time together, do kirtan together. Devotees who love to discuss Krishna Katha, they will spend time together. Devotees who like deity worship, you will oftentimes see them spending time with each other together. So the definition of like-mindedness becomes even more fine-tuned, relishing the same limb of devotional service. Then after some more time, when they progress even further and come to the stage of developing a particular relationship with Krishna in a particular rasa, then their definition of like-minded will get even more fine-tuned. If I am aspiring for Sakya rasa, they may look out for those devotees who are similarly aspiring, so that they can sit with them and discuss Katha, which is mutually relishing to each other. So like that, the principle is, there is a very famous verse often quoted by our acharyas from the book Hari Bhakti Sudodaya. Interestingly, this verse is spoken by Hiranyakashipu to Prahlad Maharaj, but very often quoted verse, because he speaks a very beautiful philosophical point for the wrong reason. Yasya yat sangati pumso manivat syat tad gunaihi swakula ridyai tato dhiman swayutan eva samshrayet. He says to Prahlad Maharaj, he says, "Oh Prahlad, you should not associate with the Vaishnavas. Why? Because you are an asura. I know as an asura, your goal of life is to become the greatest asura. And the biggest element to achieve your goal of life is to have like-minded association. You should have the association of other asuras and not Vaishnavas, because if you have the association of Vaishnavas, you will be, your goal will not be attained. You will not sustain your enthusiasm to attain your goal." What Hiranyakashipu did not know was Prahlad Maharaj had a different goal. And he was exactly associating with the Vaishnavas in order to nourish that enthusiasm to pursue that goal. Okay. So the first aspect of good association is like-mindedness. Second is snigde. Snigde means affectionate. Again, Bhakti-Rakshak Sridhar Swami Maharaj, in his commentary to Nectar of Instruction, he says, the path of bhakti, the path of perfection, is a long path. And it has lots of pebbles and thorns and stones. The path will not be an easy path. But if you have some good affectionate association, it is easier to overcome the fatigue of the long journey, he says. So, on a spiritual path, there are two things which are very important. One is devotion and affection. So, a successful devotee is one who learns the art of sowing the seed of devotion where there is an affection corpus, and one who learns to sow the seed of affection where there is a devotional corpus. Okay, so you can say a good grihastha has, he already has an affection corpus. All the family members, they are together under the same roof because there is a mutual bond. A mutual bond which is nourished by activities which nourish the loving dependence on each other. So if he is an expert in sowing the seeds of devotion in that assembly where there is a pre-existing corpus of affection, then he can be successful because he can live there with both devotion and affection. The other aspect is the situation is the ashram, where you have a common group of people who have come here for the sole purpose of progressing spiritually. So you have a readily available corpus of devotion. But one has to learn the art of sowing the seed of devotion, seed of affection. If that is there, then one can be successful. So both are important. If one learns this art of sowing the seed of affection where there is a devotional corpus, and learning the art of sowing the seed of devotion where there is a affection corpus, then they can be successful in the path of devotion. So this is the second aspect of a sangha. Sajatiya ashe, like-minded, snigde, affectionate, and the third is swato vare. The association should be, he should be more advanced than oneself. Or at least there must be a mutual desire to push the other person to advance. When there is it may be even peers, but peers who are genuinely concerned about the spiritual progress of the other person. That is also swato vare. Okay. So, there are many verses which talks about dividing devotees into, Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta, dikshasti chet pranatibhischa bhajantamisham, shushrushaya bhajana vigyam ananyam anya nindadi shunya hridamipsita sangalabdya. So Srila Rupa Goswami in his Nectar of Instruction talks about, the Kanishtadikari, the Madhyamadikari and the Uttamadikari. One who chants the holy names, he is Kanishtadikari. One who has progressed himself to come to the level of Diksha, he is a Madhyamadikari. One whose heart is completely free of the propensity to criticize others and who is faithfully engaged in serving the Lord, he is Uttamadikari, like that. So Swato Vare means you have to identify a person who is more advanced. But if you have to identify a person who is more advanced, you have to discriminate. But the problem is, but won't discrimination lead to judgmentalism? Oh, he is advanced, he is not advanced. He is advanced, he is not advanced. Will it not lead to offensive mentality? So this is the next theme that we'll discuss. Won't discrimination lead to judgmentalism? We will discuss on this. The point is, whether we want to accept or not, we always discriminate. This happens always. When the spiritual master comes, you pay full prostrated obeisances. When another senior devotee comes, you may pay Panchanga Pranam, or you may just bow down. So someone may say that I don't discriminate. Well, this is discrimination. You are not giving the same respect that you are giving to a spiritual master to an ordinary devotee. So you may not call it discrimination, but your act indicates that this is discrimination. And this is not necessarily wrong. This is actually important. What we do is we misinterpret discrimination and judgmentalism. But in reality, discrimination is an act of intelligence, whereas judgmentalism is an act of, it is performed by the mind. So these two are two different things. Of course, they may cooperate with each other. When the mind wants to judge, the intelligence may provide necessary discrimination to judge. If the mind wants to respect, the intelligence may provide the necessary discrimination to give proper respect. So we think we don't wish to discriminate because we don't want to judge. But we anyways do discrimination automatically. So discrimination should be, the point is that discrimination, we should discriminate. Why? To give proper respect, not to judge. That is why Sakale Samman Korite Shakati Deho Nata Jata Jata. Sakale Samman Korite Shakati. My dear Lord, please give me the strength to properly respect people. To respect people. Sakale Samman Korite Shakati Deho Nata. And then he adds Jata Jata. Jata Jata means what? As it perfectly befits. The right kind of respect should be given. For that, discrimination is needed. It is very critical. So when you are staying in a society, in an institution, the institution unwittingly and naturally promotes a kind of hierarchy and discrimination. No one actively talks about it, but it is automatically understood. Okay. But the Shastras also give definitions to discriminate. But interestingly, we very naturally embrace the institutional hierarchy and the criteria for discrimination, but somehow we feel very, very insecure and fearful of accepting the Shastric definitions of discrimination. Okay. So, in a natural society, you will have discrimination based on age, the time that they have spent in Krishna consciousness, the managerial position that they may, occupy, how much they control, the resources, their ashram, or in today's day and age, their social media presence, everything. We automatically start, there is a discrimination that is created. No one actively talks about it, but it is there. We automatically develop. We are already discriminating based on all these externals. So therefore, why be afraid of discriminating based on the proper definitions that the Shastras give? And especially in a spiritual institution, any rank and file devotee, the natural inner wiring is that, oh, this is a spiritual institution. So whoever is higher up is definitely there purely based on his spiritual credentials. This is a natural understanding, which is reasonable. But it is not foolproof necessarily. It is reasonable but not foolproof, because to conduct an institution, spiritual maturity in itself is not sufficient. You do need to have managerial skills, and oftentimes, more than that, you have to do with what is available. Okay, oftentimes. Okay. So therefore, but this is not a very foolproof thing necessarily. Therefore, education is very critical. Educating in the right definitions. Okay. Don't get me wrong, not that we do not respect age, we do not respect position. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Chaitanya Shikshamrit talks about Maryada, respect according to various criteria, according to Varna, according to Ashrama, according to one's position, the responsibilities that they take. We do give respect for all of that. But there is a difference between giving respect and seeking spiritual nourishment and inspiration. Those are two different things. Okay. So we do give respect for all these things, but we do need spiritual nourishment at every moment, spiritual inspiration at every moment. And that spiritual inspiration is always individual. it cannot be institutionalized. If you institutionalized inspiration, it is lost. So what do I mean by institutionalizing inspiration? Where there is an unspoken understanding that the inspiration should come from only these people, which is very good. But sometimes it may, either they may not be qualified, or it may just be a mismatch of flavor. So the inspiration is not coming. So the counselor thinks, oh, he is not a good devotee. He must not be spiritually inspired because he is not regularly attending my counseling meetings. Or the counselor thinks, oh, I am not feeling spiritually inspired. Why? Because my counsel is not encouraging me sufficiently. So now you see here, there is a very subtle, unspoken institutionalization of inspiration, where the counselor thinks that if I don't give, inspiration will not flow to that person. And the counselor certainly thinks that if he is not inspiring me, there is no way I can get inspiration. So these kind of subtle, unspoken institutionalization of inspiration can potentially happen if the right definitions are not discussed and spoken. Okay, so for this there has to be proper education. If there is no proper education, the silent generals who are silently, day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out, performing their devotional service without any expectation of respect or recognition, they will anyways progress. But it is a loss for others. Okay, it is a loss for others because there is an easy opportunity to associate with them and take inspiration. But we are looking at the wrong definitions and discriminating based on wrong definitions. And we are losing out. We are catching hold of the wrong dhoti. Right? So, now, do the Shastras actually support discrimination? The answer is yes. The Shastras do support discrimination. That's why there are so many definitions of Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama throughout the Shastras. Throughout the Shastras. NOD talks about it. Shastre yuktaucha nipuna sarvata drida nishchayah prauda shraddho adhikariyah sabakta uttamo mata uttamadhikari. And then similarly madhyamadhikari. Yo bhaved, yes shastradishu anipuna shraddhavan satu madhyama. Yo bhaved komala shraddha sa kanishto nigadyate. So like that there are definitions. NOD gives a definition of Kanishta, Madhyama and Uttama. If Rupa Goswami did not want devotees to discriminate, why would he give this definition? NOI, he gives another definition in NOI. We saw Krishneti yasya giritam. Srimad Bhagavatam talks about it. Archayam eva haraye pujamya shraddaye hate Kanishtadhikari. One who respects the deities but does not respect the devotee. He is a Kanishtadhikari. Of course, I wish to just touch on this topic little bit because it's a very critical topic. Oh, I'm sorry. I went over time. I'll just end with this. Of course, I wanted to talk on the glories of Vaishnavas, but maybe that will be spoken in future sessions. But I will just end with this one small thing. Respect. Oftentimes we think one who respects devotee is Madhyamadhikari, one who does not respect is a Kanishtadhikari. This is a very oversimplified definition actually. It is not respect. It is actually differential respect. I will explain. Because respect in itself is a result of one's conditioning. Respect or disrespect. Whereas the differential respect that one gives is a symptom of one's value system, what one values. You may have, for example, let's say someone gives 100 units of respect to non-devotees. Okay. And he gives 100 units of respect to devotees. Okay. Now if you see delta R is 0. You may have another devotee who gives 20 units of respect only to devotees, but he gives 10 units of respect to non-devotees. Okay? He is giving very less respect to devotees, but he is giving even lesser respect to the non-devotees. Why is he giving little more respect to the devotees? Because he values the devotees more. So it is not respect alone. It is valuing the association. So here you see delta R is 10 units. Okay. So in mathematical terms, if you have to say, if delta R equals 0, he is a Prakrita Bhakta. If delta R is greater than 0, he is a Madhyamadhikari, devotee. If delta R is less than 0, he is a Dveshi. If he hates devotees more than... therefore you can have a very respectful Kanishtadhikari and a disrespectful Madhyamadhikari. So it is not respect or disrespect, but it is how much you respect the devotee little more than the non-devotee. So that is what defines actually a devotee, because that differential respect indicates one's value system, whereas respect itself is just a sign of one's conditioning, which may be severely bad or very good, like that. So thank you very much, and I apologize for going over time. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.